I found out I'd been downgraded from groom to background extra while brushing my teeth at midnight, phone propped against the mirror, mint foam in my mouth, watching my fiancée's Bachelorette live stream. Wobble between shots of glitter crowns and a karaoke machine that sounded like a dying blender. She lifted a shot glass, eyes glazed with victory, and announced, like a weather alert, that she'd shaved for her ex, then cackled as her friends howled and clinked neon cups. The comments rolled up the screen like confetti from hell. Someone typed Team Nostalgia, which is a cute way to spell betrayal. I stood there in boxer shorts and loyalty, listening to her toast freedom the night before cake tasting. My jaw didn't drop. It clocked out. The worst part wasn't the words. It was how easy they came, like she'd practiced in the mirror next to mine. I replayed the clip, rewound the laugh, paused on the smug little smile that used to be mine at 2 a.m. Then I noticed the dress bag hanging behind her in the frame. A pale ghost worth 200 grand, drifting like a rich aunt's sigh. Somewhere between rinse and spit, a plan strolled in wearing slippers. Not rage, not drama. Just a tidy idea that made my shoulders loosen and my heartbeat slow to a metronome. If she wanted spectacle, I could give spectacle, with better lighting and a cleaner ending. I switched off the tap and asked myself quietly, what's the perfect punchline to a public joke? Looking back, the signs weren't hidden. They were doing cartwheels with sparklers in my face, and I just applauded like a proud idiot. The first red flag was her gym buddy. Most people come home sweaty from cardio. She came home glowing like she'd been gently misted at a spa, makeup untouched, ponytail pristine. I asked once if they even broke a sweat. She smiled and said, "We hydrate a lot." I thought she meant Gatorade, not champagne on a balcony. Then there were the playlists. 47 carefully curated songs titled X Hits, which she blasted while cleaning. Nothing says I'm over him like vacuuming to your ex-boyfriend's acoustic cover of Love Me Again. I told myself she was just nostalgic. People keep yearbooks, right? Except yearbooks don't text back at 2 in the morning. The Uber fiasco should have been my final clue. She ordered a ride home from a friend's party and swore the driver accidentally took a scenic detour that lasted 2 hours, ending at the opposite side of town. She explained it like it was the plot of a bad rom-com, complete with GPS sabotage and fate. I nodded, because I believed fate too. Mostly the fate of being a gullible fiancé who trusted Google Maps less than his own lying partner. She had another habit I brushed aside, disappearing into self-care weekends. She'd pack an overnight bag with more lingerie than lotion and vanish to a retreat. I imagined meditation circles and green juice. Reality looked more like candlelit dinners in somebody else's apartment. When she returned, she'd toss around phrases like energy cleanse while wearing a necklace I'd never seen before. I chalked it up to healing crystals, not stolen hotel souvenirs. Even her friends gave away the plot. They whispered in corners and snapped at me when I tried to join in, like high school kids protecting the year's juiciest gossip. I figured they were planning her bridal shower. Turns out they were rehearsing lines for the live stream comedy special I'd eventually star in as the punchline. My own family tried to wave me off too. My brother once joked, "Man, she's playing in a league with different rules." I thought he was jealous because she knew how to fold fitted sheets. My mom said, "There's something behind her smile." I figured she meant ambition. Now I know she meant the X hiding behind her phone lock screen. I should have listened, but instead I wore blinders and a bow tie. The biggest giveaway was money. She always had a knack for luxury that my salary couldn't explain. I found receipts for spa trips in Palm Springs and handbags that cost more than my car tires. She insisted they were gifts from her boss, who just loves to spoil the team. I thought about applying for that job, because clearly it came with health insurance and side benefits. When the wedding dress entered the scene, I should have known destiny had lined up the perfect stage prop. $200,000, imported lace and diamonds stitched into fabric, gifted by her aunt who believed in overcompensating for generational guilt. It was the kind of gown that deserved a private security team. Instead, it hung in our closet, breathing softly at night like a rich ghost. She treated it like holy relics, whispering to it, fluffing the skirt, stroking the beading. She never looked at me like that. Meanwhile, I was ignoring my own gut, which had been screaming louder than her Bachelorette karaoke. Every canceled dinner date, every phone-died excuse, every sudden urge to attend networking mixers without a single business card, my brain filed them under coincidence. I might as well have been handing out permission slips. People say love blinds you. In my case, love gave me noise-canceling headphones and told me to hum along. But here's the thing. Hindsight is hilarious once you've stopped crying. I can catalog every red flag now with the precision of a museum tour guide. On your left, the exhibit of bad excuses. Notice the detail in the midnight text that read, "Don't wait up." On your right, the haul of mysterious jewelry. Please refrain from touching, though clearly someone already did. It would be tragic if it weren't so absurd. And absurdity is what saved me from despair. The live stream wasn't just a betrayal, it was a comedy roast where I was the absent guest of honor. Watching it didn't crush me, it woke me up. Suddenly all the signs lined up like dominoes, tipping over in a perfect, ridiculous chain reaction. I laughed until my chest hurt, not because it was funny, but because it was the only alternative to screaming. If she wanted spectacle, she'd have it. The signs I once ignored were now material for the punchline I was crafting. She thought she'd humiliated me on camera, but the real performance was just warming up backstage, starring a certain six-figure dress about to meet its curtain call. And this time, the laugh track would be mine. The morning after the live stream fiasco, I sat at the kitchen table with a mug of reheated coffee that tasted like burnt cardboard, staring at the wedding invitations stacked like unpaid parking tickets. Each ivory envelope had her calligraphy across the front, delicate swirls promising eternal bliss, while I knew the only thing eternal about us was her ability to recycle old boyfriends. I tapped my finger against the rim of the cup, listening to the hollow sound, and wondered when exactly I became a side character in my own love story. Outside, the street was quiet. Too quiet, like even the birds had better gossip to spread than me. The silence gave me room to think, which is always dangerous. I kept picturing her face on that live stream, eyes half closed, bragging like it was open mic night at the world's worst comedy club. The video replayed in my head on a loop, her friends chanting, her smirk carved into my memory like graffiti on a bathroom stall. I wasn't crying, though. I was chuckling, low and bitter, because who gets dumped by Wi-Fi? I asked myself the kind of question philosophers might enjoy. Was I marrying her, or auditioning for the role of village idiot? My gut leaned toward idiot. The dress bag in the closet became a character in this tragicomedy, a pale giant looming over me every time I opened the door, humming with a price tag that could buy me a small house or at least a lifetime supply of coffee that didn't taste like despair. I pictured it swaying slightly in the dark, like it knew a secret it wasn't sharing. That was the moment the idea took real shape. If her betrayal was a public event, then my revenge deserved a stage too. The invitations stacked in front of me became part of the set design, props in a play where the groom finally steals back the script. I sipped the last of the coffee, winced at the taste, and pushed the mug away. The kitchen clock ticked, steady and smug, like it knew the countdown had started. In that stillness, one thought echoed, clear and sharp. I wasn't just going to walk away quietly. I was going to leave behind the perfect punchline. I should have stopped at watching the live stream once, maybe twice, but instead I replayed it so many times the algorithm probably thinks I'm her #1 fan. Every time, new details leapt out like Easter eggs in a horror movie. There she was, perched on a neon bar stool with a sash that read, "Bride-to-be," except she was behaving more like ex-to-be. Her friends circled around her, waving glow sticks like a halftime show, chanting the name of her ex as though it were a sacred hymn. The bartender even leaned into the camera at one point and shouted, "Cheers to true love." I nearly spat out my beer. True Love apparently had a cover charge and 2-for-1 margaritas. I froze the screen when she lifted her glass, tilting her head back with that smug little grin I once thought was charming. Now it looked like the face of someone who just found a coupon for betrayal in the Sunday paper. And then she dropped the line, clear as a bell, that she had shaved for her ex. The crowd around her exploded into giggles, the kind of laugh that stabs you twice, once for the joke and once for the echo. Watching it felt like an out-of-body experience. I wasn't jealous. I wasn't even heartbroken anymore. I was an unpaid extra watching a blooper reel from a reality show gone wrong. I rewound again, this time noticing the dress bag in the corner, hanging like a bored spectator. That bag held $200,000 worth of fabric and delusion, courtesy of her aunt who treated money like Monopoly cash. It loomed in the background of every shot, pale and ghostly, as if silently judging the circus. My eyes kept drifting to it, until I realized the dress had become my co-conspirator. While she performed her betrayal, it just hung there, waiting for its cue. The humiliation burned at first, but then it melted into something sharper, funnier. I started narrating it in my head like a stand-up routine. So picture this. I'm engaged to a woman who treats fidelity like a limited-time offer. She goes live on the internet to brag about exfoliating for her ex, and somewhere in the corner, her six-figure gown is thinking, I should have stayed in Milan. My laughter startled even me. It wasn't the laugh of a man broken. It was the laugh of someone who just realized the universe had handed him the perfect prop for poetic justice. I sat there imagining the reactions if that gown were to suffer a tragic accident. Nothing violent, nothing criminal, just theatrical. I pictured myself putting on gloves like a surgeon preparing for an operation, carefully laying the dress out on the dining table, serenading it with violin music from YouTube as I performed what I would later call the alteration of the century. Each slash of the scissors would be precise, deliberate, and oddly satisfying, like cutting through wrapping paper on Christmas morning. The thought alone made me grin so wide I almost forgot the sting of betrayal. She had humiliated me publicly, on live stream no less. But revenge doesn't have to scream. It can whisper. And the best revenge makes the audience laugh with you, not at you. My humiliation had turned into material, and her gown had volunteered as the punchline. I poured myself another drink and imagined the aftermath, her waking up, hungover, stumbling to the closet, only to find her beloved dress had been reduced to confetti. The image played in my head like a sitcom cutaway gag, complete with canned laughter. Then I pictured the delivery. Oh yes, it deserved a delivery. What's better than waking up to a destroyed dress? Finding it dumped neatly on the doorstep, ribbons of lace spilling like party streamers, a silent encore to her live stream circus. I could already hear the neighbors whispering. The woman who toasted her ex online, now sobbing in a pile of fabric on the lawn. Justice wasn't going to come in the form of a screaming match or tears. Justice was going to arrive folded in a garbage bag, tied with irony. By the time the video ended on my phone, I wasn't angry anymore. I was calm, almost zen, like a monk who'd just discovered sarcasm as a spiritual practice. She thought she'd written me out of the story, but I was still holding the pen, and the dress was ink waiting to spill. The humiliation that once crushed me now fueled a different energy, the urge to turn her brag into the setup for my punchline. And when the curtain dropped, the audience wouldn't be her friends or followers. It would be everyone who ever got burned and wished they could laugh instead of cry. The night I finally put the plan into motion, I treated it less like sabotage and more like a performance. I slipped into the bedroom while she snored in the living room, still half drunk from her victory lap. The dress bag hung in the closet, humming like a refrigerator full of secrets. I unzipped it slowly, expecting alarms to go off, maybe a SWAT team to rappel from the ceiling. Instead, silence. Just me and $200,000 worth of imported lace staring at each other like duelists. I laid it across the dining table, smoothing the skirt with all the tenderness of a tailor, then queued up a playlist titled Dramatic Movie Scores. If she could live stream Betrayal, I could soundtrack Revenge. The scissors felt heavy in my hand, almost ceremonial. The first cut whispered through the silk, and I swear I heard applause in my head. Slice by slice, the pristine fabric turned into ribbons, like I was unwrapping the world's most expensive piñata. I didn't rush. I savored it, pausing between cuts to sip beer and admire my handiwork. By the time I finished, the gown looked less like a wedding dress and more like a clearance bin at a craft store. The finale was delivery. I stuffed the shredded masterpiece into a giant black bag, slung it over my shoulder like Santa Claus of petty revenge, and carried it to the front porch. The night air was cool, sharp, almost congratulatory. I dumped the bag neatly against the door, arranged a few strips of lace to spill out dramatically, then stepped back to admire the scene. It looked like modern art. Exhibit A, the cost of arrogance. I snapped a quick photo for my own archives, proof that humiliation can be recycled into comedy. Walking back inside, I felt lighter than I had in months. She wanted spectacle, and I had just delivered a silent encore no live stream could compete with. I didn't need an audience to laugh with me. The punchline was already perfect. The dress was gone, the revenge delivered, and I was finally free from both her and the ghost that gown had cast over my future. Morning came with the kind of clarity that only follows a storm. I brewed coffee that didn't taste like defeat for once, sat at the kitchen table, and waited for the curtain to rise. Right on cue, a scream sliced through the quiet, high and sharp enough to curdle milk. I nearly spilled my mug, though not from nerves, more from trying not to laugh too soon. She had found the bag. Through the blinds, I saw her standing on the porch in silk pajamas, hair tangled, clutching strips of lace like a woman who'd just discovered her bank account had been hacked. The shredded pieces fluttered around her feet, catching the morning breeze, and for a moment it looked like a parade celebrating the end of her dignity. She spun in circles, scanning the street for witnesses. Oh, there were plenty. Our neighbors are nosier than the FBI. Old Mrs. Cartwright pretended to water her roses with the hose aimed nowhere in particular, while the teenage kid across the road filmed from his driveway, grinning like he'd won the lottery of viral content. Even the mailman slowed down to watch, letters in hand, head tilted in curiosity. She shrieked again, stomping her feet like a toddler, clutching one mangled sleeve to her chest as though she could resuscitate it. I leaned back in my chair and let the scene unfold like theater, sipping coffee between acts. Her friends, the same ones who had giggled through the live stream, started arriving in pairs, summoned by panic texts. They rushed to her side, wide-eyed, and then, beautifully, poetically, they laughed. They actually laughed. Not at me, not with her, but at the absurdity of watching a $200,000 dress transformed into porch confetti. One even bent down, held up a scrap of fabric, and said, "Looks like streamers for your next party." I almost applauded. The humiliation that was supposed to belong to me had boomeranged back with interest. Her aunt arrived next, face redder than a traffic light, clutching her pearls as if she'd just witnessed financial homicide. She scolded my fiancé in front of everyone, demanding to know how she could be so careless, so reckless, so unworthy of an heirloom investment. I couldn't hear every word through the window, but the tone carried. The aunt wasn't just angry about the dress. She was furious about the live stream, too. Apparently word had already spread faster than wildfire that her precious niece had toasted to an ex online, dragging family reputation through digital mud. I watched my bride-to-be, ex-bride-to-be now, sputter excuses, pointing fingers, waving her arms like a malfunctioning windmill. None of it mattered. The more she talked, the deeper the hole grew. Her friends kept snickering, her aunt's voice grew sharper, and the neighbors whispered with delight. I hadn't lifted a finger that morning, and yet the world was performing my revenge on my behalf. That's the thing about public humiliation. It doesn't need narration. It feeds on itself, rolling downhill like a snowball of shame. She stomped back inside eventually, dragging the bag with her, trailing lace scraps along the floor. I stayed at the table, pretending to read the newspaper, suppressing the grin that threatened to split my face in half. When she finally confronted me, eyes blazing, she screamed accusations like a prosecutor in a soap opera. "Did you do this? Did you destroy my gown?" I blinked slowly, took another sip of coffee, and said with a shrug, "Maybe moths have unionized." Her jaw dropped. The audacity of not admitting anything broke her more than an outright confession would have. She sputtered, stomped her feet again, and stormed off, slamming the bedroom door so hard a picture frame rattled. I could have ended it there, but poetic justice deserved an encore. So that afternoon I printed screenshots of her live stream, complete with the comments section. Heart emojis, laughing faces, one guy typing "legend," and left them neatly stacked on the coffee table. No captions, no notes, just raw evidence. When she emerged later, eyes swollen from crying, she spotted the pile and froze, her face drained of color. She knew exactly what it meant. I didn't have to say a word. I picked up my keys, slipped on my jacket, and told her I'd be gone for a while. Her shrill voice chased me down the hall, begging, threatening, bargaining all at once. But the sound no longer pierced me. It just rolled off like rain against a windshield. Out in the driveway, neighbors watched discreetly, probably updating group chats with every detail. I smiled, waved at Mrs. Cartwright, and drove off into the clean slate of afternoon sunlight. Over the next few days, the fallout grew funnier than any sitcom. Her friends slowly drifted away, embarrassed to be seen with her. The viral clip of her drunken toast spread online, thanks to the teenager across the street. The aunt froze her credit cards and announced she wouldn't pay for a single cent of the wedding. Vendors began canceling bookings when payments failed to arrive. And me? I went about my life lighter than ever, liberated from both a sham relationship and the shadow of a ridiculous gown. She tried calling, texting, even sending guilt-tripped emails, but every attempt felt weaker than the last. The final message read, "We can fix this. Don't let a mistake ruin everything." I laughed out loud. A mistake is burning toast. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary dinner. Live streaming your ex-love confession in a tiara isn't a mistake. It's a talent show of betrayal. The best part? I never had to raise my voice, never had to beg, never had to fight. I simply let her unravel, nudged along by a pair of scissors and a sense of humor. Watching her social kingdom crumble around her while I sipped lattes felt like karmic theater at its finest. Revenge hadn't tasted bitter. It had tasted smooth, like the first good coffee after a long drought. And as I sat in my favorite cafe, the laughter of strangers around me blending into background music, I realized the curtain had closed on that chapter with perfect timing. She wanted spectacle. She got it. And I got peace, seasoned with irony, served piping hot. I didn't expect the quiet after the storm to feel this sweet. The house, once buzzing with her chaos, finally sounded like itself again. Just the hum of the fridge, the tick of the clock, and me, stretching out on the couch with a blanket that wasn't stolen from some boutique spa. I thought I'd feel hollow, maybe even lonely. Instead, I felt like someone had opened a window after years of stale air. The invitations still sat in their stack, but now they looked less like promises and more like junk mail. I gathered them up one evening, tied them with string, and carried the bundle to the recycling bin. As I dropped them in, the hollow thunk echoed like a drumbeat of closure. No anger, no tears, just a calm sense that I had officially canceled my subscription to chaos. The neighborhood still buzzed with gossip, but I wasn't the butt of the joke anymore. If anything, people nodded at me with a kind of secret respect, like I'd pulled off a stunt they wished they'd thought of first. Even the teenager who filmed her porch meltdown gave me a thumbs up across the street. I started to walk with lighter steps, my shoulders no longer hunched as if carrying the weight of a circus. Nights grew easier. I'd cook simple meals, sip beer without bracing for a text that she was working late, and let silence fill the room she used to crowd with noise. It wasn't empty. It was peaceful. My mind replayed the live stream less and less, until it became less of a wound and more of a punchline I told myself on bad days. The dress, in its shredded glory, had become a symbol, not of bitterness, but of release. I pictured it not as destroyed fabric, but as confetti scattered at the end of a show, signaling that the performance was over. Every strip of lace she clutched in panic that morning was really a ribbon cutting me free. And that realization made me laugh harder than anything else. I asked myself the kind of question that used to sting. How could I have ignored so many signs? But now the answer didn't matter. What mattered was that I wasn't ignoring anything anymore. I'd seen the truth, and instead of drowning in it, I'd learned to laugh. Humor had carried me out of a swamp of lies and into solid ground. The irony of losing a fiancé but finding my own sanity was too perfect to be tragic. I fell asleep that night with no plans, no wedding to dread, no drama to manage. Just me, a quiet room, and the strange joy of knowing the punchline belonged to me after all. In the weeks that followed, I found myself rebuilding not with grand gestures, but with small, ordinary things that felt brand new. I bought groceries without scanning for her favorite snacks. I cooked meals I actually liked instead of pretending kale smoothies were edible. I rediscovered sleep, deep, quiet rest without midnight alarms from a phone buzzing with lies. Every morning, I woke up lighter, as if the shredded gown had carried away the last of the weight pressing on my chest. Friends checked in, some cautiously, worried I might be broken. But I wasn't broken. I was free. We laughed together about the absurdity of it all, how betrayal had tried to crush me but ended up handing me material for the best comedy sketch of my life. Work felt easier. Even traffic didn't grind me.